Humans act only when it matters, and the universe. Learn Too Late Part 1. The Galactic Assembly was the oldest institution in known space. For 4,000 years, representatives from hundreds of species had gathered in its great hall to argue, negotiate, and shape the future of civilization. Wars had been stopped here. Alliances had been formed. History had been written in these halls more times than anyone could count. Ambassador Yoon Dae-soon had represented humanity in this place for 30 years. In all that time, he had never once asked to speak. He sat in the human section now, a small area near the back of the massive chamber. His assistant, a young woman named Kira, sat beside him with a tablet in her hands. She was taking notes on the current debate, though she knew it did not matter. Humanity never voted. Humanity never proposed anything. Humanity just watched. The debate today was about trade routes through the Varith system. The Telvari wanted exclusive access. The Breen Coalition wanted shared rights. It was the same argument they had been having for 50 years, and Dae-soon had heard every version of it. He was 73 years old. His hair was white, and his face was lined with age. But his eyes were sharp and clear. He missed nothing that happened in this chamber. He simply chose to say nothing about it. The Telvari ambassador, a tall insectoid named Mosek, was speaking now. His voice clicked and buzzed through the translation systems. He was making his case with passion, his forearms waving for emphasis. Then he stopped. He turned his compound eyes toward the human section. "Perhaps we should ask our human colleagues for their opinion," Mosek said. His tone was mocking. "Oh, wait. They do not have opinions. They have never had opinions. In 300 years of membership, humanity has contributed nothing to this assembly." Kira's hands tightened on her tablet. She looked at Dae-soon, expecting him to respond. He did not move. Mosek continued. "They sit there, session after session, year after year. They watch us debate. They watch us struggle. And they do nothing. Perhaps humans are simply spectators. Perhaps that is all they know how to be." Laughter rippled through parts of the chamber. Other species had wondered the same thing for centuries. Humanity had joined the galactic community 300 years ago. They had established colonies. They had traded goods. They had been polite and professional in every interaction, but they had never taken a side. They had never fought in any war. They had never proposed a single law or resolution. They just existed, quiet and passive, as if the great matters of the galaxy did not concern them. Councillor Breen, an avian diplomat with golden feathers, raised a wing for attention. "Ambassador Mosek, perhaps we should focus on the matter at hand rather than insulting our colleagues." "I insult no one," Mosek replied. "I simply state facts. Humans are relevant. They always have been." Dae-soon still did not speak. His expression did not change. Kira leaned close to him. "Ambassador," she whispered, "are we just going to let him say these things?" Dae-sung's voice was calm and quiet. "Yes, but he is calling us cowards. He is calling us spectators. There's a difference." The old ambassador's eyes never left the chamber floor. "We act when it matters, Kira. Nothing here has mattered yet." Kira wanted to argue, but she knew better. She had worked for Dae-soon for 5 years. She had learned that he never did anything without reason. If he chose silence, there was a purpose behind it. The debate continued for another hour. The Telvari and the Breen Coalition argued back and forth. Other species offered compromises that were rejected. It was the same dance that had been happening for decades. Then the alarms started. Red lights flashed across the ceiling of the great chamber. Warning sounds echoed from every speaker. The massive display screens that normally showed voting tallies suddenly switched to show a star map. A system on the edge of known space was blinking red. Then another. Then 3 more. The assembly fell silent. A mechanical voice spoke through the systems. Emergency transmission received. Priority Alpha. Source. Monitoring Station Cat 7. The screens changed again. They showed a recording now. A Breen officer appeared, his feathers pressed flat against his body in terror. This is Station Cat 7. We have confirmed contact with unknown hostile force. They came from deep space. Thousands of ships. They are consuming everything. Metal, energy, organic matter. Nothing stops them. We have identified their signature. Gods help us all. It is the Hollow Swarm. The Hollow Swarm has returned. The recording ended with static. For a long moment, no one moved. No one spoke. The Hollow Swarm was a legend, a nightmare from ancient history. They were a machine collective that had nearly destroyed civilization thousands of years ago. They were supposed to be extinct. Then panic erupted. Species began shouting at each other. Accusations flew across the chamber. The Telvari blamed the Breen for inadequate border patrols. The Breen blamed the Telvari for ignoring warning signs. Smaller species demanded protection. Larger species demanded explanations. In the human section, Kira watched the chaos with wide eyes. Her tablet had fallen from her hands. She looked at Day-Sung. The old ambassador was standing. He moved slowly, as if he had all the time in the world. He walked down from the human section toward the speaker's platform at the center of the chamber. His footsteps were steady and calm. No one noticed him at first. They were too busy arguing. Then Counselor Breen saw him. The avian diplomat raised a wing and called for silence. Slowly, the chamber quieted. Every eye turned to the human ambassador, who had never spoken in 30 years. Daesung reached the platform. He looked out at the hundreds of representatives gathered there. Insectoids, avians, reptilians, beings of light and crystal and living metal. All of them stared at him. Humanity requests the floor, he said. His voice was not loud, but it carried through the silent chamber like thunder. Mosik's mandibles clicked in surprise. The human speaks. After 30 years, the human finally speaks. Daesung turned to face him. We speak when it matters. And this matters? Yes. Daesung looked back at the screens showing the spreading red markers. The Hollow Swarm was moving fast. This is what we have been waiting for. Counselor Breen leaned forward. Waiting for? You knew about this? We knew they would return. Daesung's voice was steady. We have known for 300 years. That is why we joined your assembly. Not to participate in your politics. Not to take sides in your wars. We came to watch. To wait. To prepare. The chamber was completely silent now. Prepare? Mosik's voice was uncertain for the first time. Prepare for what? Daesung smiled. It was a small smile, but it held something that made even the proudest ambassadors feel suddenly cold. To end this. He touched a control on the platform. The screens changed again. They showed a fleet emerging from fold space near the edge of the Vareth system. 10,000 human warships. Weapons charged. Ready for war. No one in the galaxy had known they existed. Mosek stared at the screens. His compound eyes reflected the image of the massive fleet. His voice came out as a whisper. They were never sleeping. They were hunting. Daesung nodded once. Now humanity will act. Stay out of our way. Humans act only when it matters, and the universe learned too late. Part 2, 300 years ago. Humanity learned that it was not alone in the universe. They also learned that the universe was not kind. Admiral Park. GU-1 stood in the Strategic Command Center, beneath the mountains of Earth. The room was buried 2 kilometers underground, protected by layers of rock and metal and energy shields. Only 40 people in all of human space knew this place existed. G1 was 61 years old. Her black hair was streaked with gray. and her face showed the weight of decades of command. She had spent her entire life preparing for a war that most people thought would never come. Now that war was here. "Show me the current positions," she ordered. The holographic display in the center of the room flickered to life. It showed the galaxy in miniature, with human space marked in blue and the hollow swarm's advance marked in red. The red was spreading fast. General No Taehyuk stood beside her. He was older than G1, nearly 80, but his mind was still sharp. He was one of the few people alive who remembered the First War. "They are moving faster than we predicted," Taehyuk said. "They have already consumed 4 systems. Estimates suggest they will reach the inner colonies within 2 weeks. The assembly? Panicking. As expected, they have sent requests for assistance to every member species. No one has responded. No one knows how to fight this." G1 nodded. She had expected this too. "And our fleet?" "In position. 10,000 ships ready to engage on your order. Admiral Baek Soo-min is commanding the forward elements. She awaits your instructions." G1 turned to look at another person in the room. Dr. Song Hana was young for this company, only 42, but she was perhaps the most important person in human space. She was the chief scientist of Project Anchor, the weapon that humanity had spent 3 centuries building. "Is it ready?" G1 asked. Hana's face was pale but determined. "The Anchor network is fully operational. 37 stations positioned throughout neutral space. When activated, they will create gravity wells that trap anything in fold space. The swarm will not be able to call for reinforcements." "And the primary weapon?" "The silence is installed on the Jindo. It is ready to deploy." Hana paused. "But Admiral, I must repeat my concerns. The weapon's effective range is very short. To use it against the swarm's command node, a ship will have to get extremely close. The chances of survival are minimal. I know." G1 turned back to the display. "I have always known." Taehyuk stepped forward. "G1, we should tell the assembly. If they understood what we have built, what we can do, they would support us." "No. Why not?" "Their ships could help. Their resources. Their ships would get in the way." G1's voice was firm, but not harsh. "They have not trained for this. They do not understand the swarm. If they enter the battle, they will die uselessly and make our job harder. We will do this alone." Taehyuk was silent for a moment. Then he nodded. He had survived the First War. He knew better than anyone what the swarm was capable of. "Tell me again," Hana said quietly. "Tell me why we did not warn them. Why we let the galaxy think we were cowards for 300 years. G1 walked to the far wall of the command center. There was a memorial there, a simple stone panel covered in names. Millions of names, carved in tiny letters. "These are the people who died in the First War," she said. 17 million humans. 3 colony worlds destroyed completely. The swarm found us before we found the assembly. They attacked without warning, without reason. They simply consumed." She touched the stone gently. "We survived because of luck and sacrifice. Admiral Cho led the last fleet against them, knowing he would die. He destroyed their command node with a nuclear strike at close range. It killed him and his entire fleet. But it stopped the swarm. We thought we destroyed them," Taehyuk added. "We were wrong. Some of them escaped into deep space. We found the evidence 20 years later. They were rebuilding, waiting, just like us." G1 turned back to face Hana. "So we prepared. We studied every piece of swarm technology we could find. We built weapons specifically designed to destroy them. We constructed a fleet in secret, hidden from the galaxy, because we knew that when the swarm returned, we would have to fight them alone. But why alone? Hannah pressed. The assembly has resources. They have ships. They could have helped us prepare. Could they? G1 smiled sadly. The assembly cannot agree on trade routes after 50 years of debate. Do you think they could agree on how to prepare for a threat that might never come? They would have argued. They would have delayed. They would have demanded compromises that would have weakened our defenses. And when the swarm finally came, we would not have been ready. She gestured at the display. Look at them now. The swarm has been back for 3 days. The assembly is still arguing about whose fault it is. They will be arguing when the swarm reaches their capitals. Hannah was silent. She understood, even if she did not like it. A communication officer spoke up. Admiral, Ambassador Yoon is requesting a connection. He says the assembly is demanding answers. Put him through. The holographic display shifted to show Daesung's face. The old ambassador looked tired but satisfied. It is done, he said. I have informed the assembly that humanity will handle this alone. They are not happy. They never are. G1 moved closer to the display. Did they believe you? They did not have a choice. Our fleet is already engaging the swarm's outer formations. They can see it happening in real time. They know we were not bluffing. And the Tovari? Daesung smiled. Ambassador Mosek has not spoken since I revealed the fleet. I believe he is reconsidering many of his opinions about humanity. Ji-Yuan allowed herself a small laugh. Good. Keep them calm, Daesung. Keep them away from the battle zone. We cannot protect them and fight the swarm at the same time. Understood. And G1? Yes? Make sure we win. I would hate to have broken my 30 years of silence for nothing. The connection ended. G1 turned to her officers. The room was quiet, but she could feel the tension in the air. These people had trained their entire lives for this moment. Their parents had trained for it. Their grandparents had trained for it. 300 years, she said. 300 years of waiting. 300 years of building. 300 years of being called cowards and spectators by species who have never faced what we have faced. She looked at each of them in turn. Today, that ends. Today, humanity acts. Not because we want to prove ourselves. Not because we want glory or recognition. We act because this is the threat we were made to face. This is what matters. She walked to the command console and placed her hand on the activation panel. Send the order. All ships engage. The hunt begins now. Across human space, hidden shipyards opened. Secret bases activated. Soldiers who had trained in shadows finally stepped into the light. The galaxy would never see humanity the same way again. Humans act only when it matters, and the universe learned too late Part 3. The Vera system had become a graveyard. Billions of swarm units filled the space between planets, their black metal bodies blocking out the light of the star. They moved in perfect coordination, like a single organism with 1 trillion parts. Captain Beak. Su-Min stood on the bridge of the battleship unyielding and watched them come. Status report, she ordered. Lieutenant Cho Yuna looked up from her tactical console. She was young, only 28, but she had graduated first in her class at the academy. She had studied swarm tactics for 10 years. She had never seen them in person until today. Enemy forces are holding formation around the 3rd planet, Yuna said. Approximately 80 million units. They are not advancing toward us. They seem to be waiting. Waiting for what? Unknown. But Admiral Park's analysis was correct. They are protecting something at the center of their formation. Something important. Su-Min nodded. The swarm did not think like organic beings. They had no fear, no ambition, no desire for conquest. They simply consumed resources and expanded. But they did have a central command structure. Somewhere in that mass of metal was a node that controlled all of them. Destroy that node, and the swarm would die. Pilot Officer Wang, what is the status of your squadron? A voice crackled through the communication system. Jinho sounded calm, but Su Min knew him well enough to hear the tension underneath. Eagle Squadron ready for launch. 40 fighters standing by. Just give us a target, Captain. Stand by. We need more information first. The Unyielding was positioned at the edge of the human fleet. Around her, 9,000 other warships held formation. They were the largest military force humanity had ever assembled, and they faced an enemy that outnumbered them by a factor of thousands. But numbers were not everything. Captain, Yuna said suddenly, the anchor network is activating. Su Min looked at the tactical display. Across the system, hidden stations were powering up. They had been placed here years ago, disguised as debris or asteroids. No one had known they were weapons. The stations fired simultaneously. Not missiles or energy beams, but something far more strange. Gravity pulses. They warped the fabric of space itself, creating wells that trapped anything trying to enter or leave through fold space. The swarm's reinforcement lines were cut. Confirmed, Yuna reported. Fold space disruption at 100%. Nothing can enter or leave this system. We have them trapped. And ourselves? Su Min noted. We cannot retreat either. No, Captain. This is a one-way battle. Su Min smiled grimly. Then we better win. She opened a channel to the fleet. All ships, this is Captain Beak. The anchor network is active. The enemy cannot escape. Begin attack pattern Alpha. Hit them hard and hit them fast. We need to find that command node. The human fleet moved forward. 10,000 ships advancing into 80 million enemies. The swarm responded immediately. Their outer formations broke apart, transforming into attack configurations. Smaller units swarmed toward the human ships in waves. Larger units charged their weapons and began to fire. The battle had begun. The Unyielding shook as enemy. Fire struck her shields. Su Min gripped her command chair and watched the tactical display. Around her, human ships were engaging the swarm at close range. It was chaos. But it was controlled chaos. They are attacking in standard patterns, Yuna reported. Same tactics they used in the First War. They have not evolved. We have. Su Min pointed at the display. Signal the 2nd Division. Execute flanking maneuver Gamma. Drive them toward the gravity well near the 4th planet. The human ships moved with perfect coordination. They had trained for this specific battle. They knew the swarm's patterns. They knew how to exploit them. Thousands of swarm units were pushed into the gravity well. They could not escape its pull. They were crushed into a single point and destroyed. But for every 1,000 destroyed, 10,000 more took their place. Captain, we have lost 47 ships, an officer reported. The swarm is adapting to our tactics. Su Min cursed under her breath. The swarm learned. Slowly, but they learned. Every trick only worked a few times before they found a counter. Then we use new tricks. Signal the 7th Division. Execute Pattern Omega. All fighters, launch now. Jinho's voice came through the communication. Finally. Eagle Squadron, you heard the captain. Let us fly. 40 fighters launched from the Unyielding. Around the fleet, hundreds more joined them. They were small and fast, designed to slip through the swarm's formations. Where larger ships could not go. Jin-Ho pushed his fighter to maximum speed. The swarm filled his vision, a wall of metal and death. But he had been training for this since he was 16 years old. He knew how to find the gaps. Eagle Squadron, follow my lead. We are going straight through. They dove into the heart of the swarm. Enemy fire filled the space around them. Jinho twisted and rolled, dodging blasts that would have vaporized his ship. Behind him, his squadron followed. He lost the first pilot 30 seconds in. Then another. Then 3 more, but they kept going. "I see it," Jinho shouted. At the center, a large structure. It is different from the others. Not a combat unit. Some kind of command vessel. He transmitted his sensor data back to the unyielding. Then enemy fire caught his wing. His fighter spun out of control. Systems failed around him. He fought to stabilize, but he was falling toward the swarm's formation. "Eagle leader is hit," someone called. "He is going down." "I am still here," Jinho managed. His voice was tight with pain. "Data transmitted. You know where the target is. Finish the mission." His fighter crashed into a swarm unit. Both were destroyed. On the unyielding, Sumin closed her eyes for a moment. Then she opened them and turned to Yuna. "Did we get the data?" "Yes, Captain." Yuna's voice was steady despite the tears in her eyes. "I have confirmed the location of the command node. It is at the exact center of the swarm formation. Heavily protected. We cannot reach it with our current forces." "How heavily protected?" "The densest concentration of swarm units ever recorded. Millions of combat units in a sphere around the target. Nothing we can break through." Sumin stared at the display. They had found the target, but they could not reach a dot around her. The battle continued. Human ships were dying. They were taking a heavy toll on the swarm, but they were dying. "Captain, incoming transmission from Admiral Park." Ji-Won's face appeared on the display. She looked calm, as always. "Captain Beak, I have received your data. You have done excellent work. Admiral, we cannot reach the target. The defensive concentration is too strong." "I know. That is why we are sending the Jindo." Sumin felt her heart stop for a moment. The Jindo was their largest ship. It carried their ultimate weapon, and she knew what using that weapon would mean. "Admiral, the Jindo cannot survive a direct approach. The swarm will destroy it before it gets close enough." "I know that too." Ji-Won's voice was soft. "Prepare your fleet to create an opening. The Jindo will do the rest." "Admiral, those are my orders, Captain." "Execute them." Ji-Won paused. "And Sumin? Tell your people they have done well. They have made humanity proud." The transmission ended. Su-Min turned to her crew. They were watching her, waiting for orders. "All ships," she said, "prepare for Phase 3. We are opening a path for the Jindo, whatever it costs." Humans act only when it matters, and the universe learned too late. Part 5. 1 year had passed since the Battle of Vareth. The Galactic Assembly was in session again. But this time, everything was different. Ambassador Yoon Dae-sung walked toward the speaker's platform. The chamber was completely silent. Every representative watched him. No one whispered. No one looked away. He was no longer the quiet ambassador who sat in the back. He was the voice of the species that had saved civilization. Kira followed behind him. She had been promoted 3 times since the battle. She now served as Dae-sung's chief advisor. But today, she was here as a witness. 1 year ago, Dae-sung began, humanity faced a choice. We could have revealed our preparations. We could have asked for help. We could have demanded that the galaxy share the burden of defending against the hollow swarm. He looked around the chamber. Mossack sat in the Telvari section, silent and small. Councillor Breen watched with respect in his golden eyes. Hundreds of other species listened to every word. We chose to act alone, not because we thought ourselves better than you, not because we wanted glory. We acted alone because we knew that unity takes time. Coordination takes debate. And the swarm would not wait for us to agree. He paused. We paid a price for that choice. 4,000 ships destroyed. 80,000 humans dead. And Admiral Park Gi-won, who gave her life to activate the weapon that ended the threat forever. The chamber remained silent. Even now, a year later, the sacrifice of the Jindo was almost too great to speak about. But we would make the same choice again. Zisung's voice was firm. Because that is who we are. We do not act for applause. We do not fight for recognition. We act when it matters. And when we act completely. He stepped back from the platform. Humanity will return to watching now. We will observe your debates. We will listen to your arguments. We will not participate in your politics. But know this, if another threat rises, if another moment comes when action is needed, we will be there. We will always be there. He turned and walked back toward the human section. The chamber erupted in applause. Far from the assembly, on a green hill overlooking the ocean, Kira stood before a memorial. The stone wall stretched for kilometers. It was covered in names. Millions of names. The dead from the First Swarm War. The dead from the Second. Admiral Park Ji-won's name was carved at the very center, surrounded by the names of every crew member who had died on the Jindo. Commander Oh Hyun-woo stood beside her. He wore an admiral's uniform now. He had been promoted to lead the rebuilt human fleet. I still see her face, he said quietly, when she ordered me to leave. When she smiled and said she was ready. Kira nodded. She had never met Ji-won personally, but she felt like she knew her. Everyone did. The Admiral had become a legend, a symbol of everything humanity represented. She knew what she was doing, Kira said. She had known her whole life. That does not make it easier. No, it does not. Kira reached out and touched Ji-won's name carved in stone. But it means something. Her life meant something. Her death meant something. How many people can say that? Hyun-woo was silent for a long moment. Then he straightened and looked out at the ocean. I have given new standing orders to the fleet, he said. Watch, wait, prepare. When it matters, we act. The same orders as always. Yes, the same orders as always. He turned to face her. We will never stop preparing. We will never stop watching. The swarm is gone, but there will be other threats. There always are, and we will be ready. We will be ready. They stood together in silence, honoring the dead. Across the galaxy, things were changing. On distant worlds, alien children sat in classrooms and learned about humans. Their teachers showed them images of the battle, recordings of the human fleet advancing against impossible odds. They told stories of Admiral Park Ji-won, who had sacrificed herself to save everyone. The children asked questions. Why did the humans wait so long? Why did they not ask for help? Why did they choose to fight alone? Their teachers gave the same answer everywhere. Because humans do not act for small reasons. They watch. They wait. They prepare. And when something truly matters, they act with everything they have. They do not stop until the job is done. They do not count the cost. They simply do what must be done. The children listened. They remembered, on the trading stations and diplomatic posts, species that had once mocked humanity now sought their friendship. They offered alliances, treaties, partnerships. They wanted human protection, human technology, human wisdom. Ambassador Daesung politely declined most of these offers. Humanity was not interested in ruling the galaxy. They were not interested in leading alliances or commanding coalitions. They were interested in being ready in the hidden bases beneath Earth's surface. New ships were being built. New weapons were being designed. New soldiers were being trained. The galaxy thought the threat was over. Humanity knew better. There would always be another threat. There would always be another moment when action was needed. And when that moment came, humanity would be there. In his office, Daesung sat alone. He was very old now, nearly 80. His body was tired, but his mind was still clear. He looked at a photograph on his desk. It showed him as a young man, standing with his first mentor in the diplomatic course. That mentor had told him the same thing that every human ambassador learned on their first day. We are watchers. We are waiters. We are preparers. We do not speak unless it matters. We do not act unless it matters. But when it matters, we speak with the voice of all humanity. And when it matters, we act with the force of 3 centuries of preparation. Daesung smiled at the memory. He had lived those words for his entire career. He had watched the galaxy make its mistakes and learn its lessons. He had waited for the moment when humanity was needed. And when that moment came, he had spoken. He leaned back in his chair and looked out the window at the stars. Somewhere out there, another threat was growing. Another danger was forming. It might take centuries to arrive. It might take millennia. But it would come eventually. The universe was too large and too old for permanent peace. And when it came, humanity would be ready. They would watch. They would wait. They would prepare. And when it mattered, they would act. That was the promise they had made to themselves 300 years ago. That was the promise they had kept when the swarm returned. That was the promise they would keep forever, because that was what it meant to be human. Not the loudest voice in the room. Not the most powerful empire. Not the most advanced technology. Just the ones who were always ready. The ones who always did what needed to be done. The ones who acted when it mattered, and who never stopped until the job was finished. The universe had learned that lesson the hard way. They would not forget it. Humans act only when it matters, and the universe learned too late. Part 4. The Jindo was the largest warship humanity had ever built. She was 3 kilometers long, armored with layers of metal and energy shields that could withstand a nuclear blast. Her crew numbered 2,000, and hidden in her core was a weapon that had taken 50 years to construct. Admiral Park Ji-won stood on the bridge and watched the battle through the forward displays. The human fleet was fighting hard, pushing against the swarm's formations, trying to create an opening. They were dying to give her a chance. "Status report," she ordered. Commander Oh Hyun-woo stood beside her. He was her second in command, a man she had known for 20 years. His face was grim but determined. "The fleet has created a corridor through the outer swarm formations. It will not stay open long. We have maybe 15 minutes before they close it. Then we move now." G1 turned to the navigation officer. "Maximum speed. Take us through." The Jindo surged forward. Her massive engines burned bright as she accelerated toward the heart of the swarm. Dr. Song Hana stood at the weapons console, monitoring the device in the ship's core. A silence, they called it. A pulse generator that could disrupt machine consciousness permanently. It had never been tested on this scale. There was no way to know exactly what would happen, but the theory was sound, and they had no other options. Entering the corridor now, the navigation officer reported. G-1 watched as the swarm formations passed by on either side. Human ships were fighting desperately to keep the path clear. She saw 2 destroyers explode as they held back a wave of enemy units. "They are dying for us," Hyun-woo said quietly. "I know." G1's voice was steady. "We will make it count." The Jindo pushed deeper into enemy territory. The swarm began to respond, turning their attention toward the massive ship. Fire struck her shields. Damage reports started coming in. Shields at 80%. Hull breaches on decks 7 and 12. Casualty reports incoming. Maintain course. G1 did not look away from the display. "How far to the target?" 500 kilometers and closing. The command node is directly ahead. They could see it now. A structure at the center of the swarm, larger than the others. It pulsed with strange energy, sending signals to the millions of units around it. This was the brain of the swarm, the source of their coordination. Their weakness: 300 kilometers. 200. Enemy fire intensified. The Jindo shook violently. Systems began to fail. Shields at 40%. Losing power to main engines. Multiple fires reported across the ship. 100 kilometers. G1 turned to Hannah. Can we fire from here? Hannah shook her head. No. The silence has a maximum effective range of 10 kilometers. We have to get closer. We will not survive getting closer, Hyanwu said. Admiral, we should consider what? G1 looked at him calmly. Retreat? The corridor is already closing. The swarm has surrounded us. We cannot go back. She walked to the center of the bridge. Around her, crew members were working frantically to keep the ship functioning. Many of them were wounded. Some were dying. But none of them stopped working. Listen to me, she said. Her voice carried across the bridge, and the ship's communication systems broadcasted to every section. I know what is happening. I know what this mission requires. The silence will destroy the command node, but it will also destroy us. There is no escape. She paused. The ship shook again as another impact hit the shields. We knew this when we built this weapon. We knew that someone would have to carry it to the target. We knew that they would not come back. That is why we volunteered. That is why we trained. Not for glory, not for recognition, because someone had to do it. And we chose to be those people. Hyanwu stepped forward. Admiral, let me stay. Let me activate the weapon. There is no reason for you to die. There is every reason. G1 smiled at him. I have been preparing for this my entire life. My parents prepared for it. Their parents prepared for it. 300 years of waiting. I will not ask anyone else to do what I have always known was my duty. She turned to the crew. Evacuate all non-essential personnel. Use the escape pods. Target the human fleet's position. They will pick you up. Admiral, Hyanwu began. That is an order, Commander. Her voice hardened. You will survive. You will rebuild the fleet. You will continue the mission. Do you understand? Hyanwu stared at her for a long moment. Then he straightened and saluted. Double quotes, yes, Admiral. The evacuation began. Escape pods launched from the Jindo in waves. The swarm tried to destroy them, but the ship's remaining weapon systems provided cover. Hana approached G1. I should stay. I designed the weapon. I understand it better than anyone. You also understand how to build another one if this fails. G1 shook her head. You are too valuable to lose, Doctor. Go. Admiral, go. Hana hesitated. Then she nodded and moved toward the escape pods. The bridge emptied. One by one, the crew evacuated. Some had to be dragged away by their colleagues, refusing to leave their admiral. But they all went eventually. Hyan-Wu was the last. It has been an honor serving with you, he said. The honor was mine. G1 clasped his hand briefly. Now go. Survive. Remember what we did here. He left. G1 stood alone on the bridge of the dying ship. The Jindo was barely moving now. Her engines were failing. Her shields were gone. The swarm was tearing her apart piece by piece, but she was still advancing. 50 kilometers to target, the automated systems reported. 40 kilometers, 30? G1 walked to the weapons console. She placed her hand on the activation panel. The silence was ready. All she had to do was press the button. 20 kilometers, 10. The swarm's command node filled the display. It was massive up close, a twisted structure of metal and energy. She could see signals pulsing through it, commands being sent to millions of units across the system. In a few seconds, those signals would stop forever. 5 kilometers. Entering effective range. G1 looked at the panel. She thought about her parents, who had trained her for this moment. She thought about her grandparents, who had survived the First War. She thought about the 17 million humans, who had died 3 centuries ago. She thought about the galaxy that had laughed at humanity for being passive. For being spectators, they were not laughing now. 300 years, she said softly. 300 years of waiting. And now it ends. She pressed the button. The silence activated. A wave of energy burst from the Jindo's core. It spread outward in all directions, invisible but devastating. It passed through the swarm's command node first, ripping apart the consciousness that held the machine collective together. Then it kept spreading. Across the system, swarm units began to fail. Their coordination collapsed. Their movements became random and confused. Millions of machines that had acted as one suddenly became millions of individual units with no purpose and no direction. They crashed into each other. They fired on themselves. They simply stopped moving, floating dead in space. The hollow swarm died. And on the bridge of the Jindo, Admiral Park G1 smiled as the energy wave consumed her ship. "It mattered," she whispered. Then there was silence.